rights in the Jewish state seems almost like an old topic for those who know Rabbi Gilad Kariv and Anat Hoffman, who I will introduce more completely before they each speak. However, the ground rules have changed. All of us who followed the events in Israel this summer, I hope, began to realize that one of the crucial outcomes of the summer was that their work, the pursuit of social justice, has become a key topic in the Israeli dialogue. Instead of feeling the discussion needs to be limited to issues of security and territories, what happens within the boundaries of the State of Israel is now a topic in which the entire country is engaged. So for the country as a whole, it may be perhaps a new era. For our friends, it's a continuation, as they will explain. So how will our afternoon together work? Each of our speakers is going to speak for 15 minutes, and then the balance of the time will be open to questions. I will introduce each speaker before she or he speaks, so you won't have to listen to me for too long. We have before us 3 Israelis, and I believe they have each turned off their cell phones. I would ask all of us to follow their lead and do the same, and remember they're suffering more withdrawal than we are. And finally, with that out of the way, I want to welcome everyone to what will be the continuation of an ongoing challenge for all of us, as we have heard in our work today. So I want to listen with an ear not only towards what they say, but what this means for what we all have to do based on what they're telling us. So first, and it's almost a shame to introduce Rabbi Kariv, but I owe him that honor, although we all know him, the Executive Director of the Israel Movement for Progressive Judaism. He's been a leader and advocate on behalf of liberal Judaism in Israel since 1998. He was ordained by the HUC in Jerusalem. He's also a lawyer. He was a clerk in the State Attorney's Office and then obtained an LLM in Public and International Law in North America. He has advanced legal and social activism on behalf of religious pluralism and social justice in Israeli society in many capacities. Most recently, he has acted as the Executive Director of the Israel Movement for Progressive Judaism since January 2009. He is also a board member of the Jewish Agency's Joint Institute for Jewish Studies and Anat, the Israel Association for Promotion of Freedom of Science, Religion, and Culture. He also represents the IMPJ at the Forum for Social Organizations in Israel, and he's a committee member of the Knesset's project to establish an Israeli constitution. His activism began during his student days on behalf of pluralistic Judaism when he joined the IMPJ and founded the Young Adult Leadership Forum. He lives in Tel Aviv with his wife Noah and his 3 adorable children. After Rabbi Kariv, we will hear from David Brose. Just don't want to leave a mystery. Rosa, I don't want to leave a mystery in the middle, and then Anat. Gilad, toda rabah.
Okay. Friends, shalom. So I'm giving to all of you. It's a privilege and a treat to be here with you and to share with you what I and I believe many of my colleagues and friends see as an exciting development in Israel. And this is the growing social awareness among so many Israelis during the last summer and since the last summer, and especially among young Israelis. I'm taking the opportunity to thank you, John, not only for chairing this session, but for the fact that the organization you're leading, I'll say the international umbrella organization of all Zionist movements inside our global progressive reform and liberal world. I want to thank you for the fact that Artseinu in so many ways is a leading partner for us in Israel in this pursuit for a just full society for Chevrat Tzedek. We are about to celebrate Hanukkah, but I would like to suggest that following the known song of Echad Mi Yodea, I will use my 13 minutes now to suggest one outcome, 2 lessons, and 3 challenges that we can take with us from the recent summer. The clearest outcome of this last exciting summer is the growing awareness of the different Israeli communities to the social challenges that our society has to meet. It doesn't mean that the last summer led in a direct way to a different political reality in Israel. It doesn't mean that our current government is going to do an economic U-turn in order to address the social issues in Israel. But I think it is clear today that the Israeli society, the Israeli community, is demanding from its leadership social accountability, and that the leaders of Israel will have to address and are demanded to address the Israeli community also with their understanding of the social challenges of the Israeli society. And this is a refreshing outcome or a refreshing development in the life of the Israeli society, because for years it was a known fact in Israeli political life that, putting aside the fact that usually Israeli leaders do not feel accountable for their action, it was a known fact that governments in Israel do not fall because of social gaps and economic challenges, and I would like to suggest that this is a clear outcome of the recent summer. 2 important lessons that we learned from the recent event. One is that even if you are deeply involved in the work of the civic organizations, the civil society, even if you trained yourself through years of practice to deal with social challenges, it is very hard to identify or to have any prophecy in regard to where is the tipping point and when we meet the tipping point. And in a way, all of us, activists of the civil society in Israel, we were all surprised by the events of the last summer. And on the one hand, it can leave you a little bit frustrated that although you invest so many efforts in pushing a social change, still you cannot predict when exactly the larger community will follow you. But on the other end, the recent summer or the recent event taught us that eventually we find blessing in what we are trying to do in the civic society in Israel. And for us people that are working to promote religious pluralism, among other values, and for us people that are used to ask themselves again and again, where are the Israelis? How come thousands of Israelis are not marching in the streets in demand for religious pluralism? I would like to suggest that one of the lessons we're taking with us from the recent summer is the fact that eventually the message is being accepted by the people. And the second lesson we took from July and August is that there is in Israel today a growing demand for an ideological discussion and for a communal experience. If you would have visited Sderot Rothschild in Tel Aviv, you could have seen that it is not only about social gaps. It is not only about the rates of poverty in Israel. It is also about a desire to feel once again the strength of the people and the ability of the people in Israel. And maybe this is a given thing for the American Reform movement. It is still not a given thing for our movement in Israel. We need to be there in order to present a Jewish progressive voice over the issues of poverty, of housing, organized labor, and many, many other social issues. And the last challenge that we have as a movement, and I'm concluding my remarks, is that we need to meet the Israelis where they choose to meet us, and not where we want to meet them. During the summer, we asked our congregations to go out there to the streets of Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa, Rosh Hashanah, and to celebrate Shabbat with the people, the young people, that decided to go out and to work together for a better Israel. In that regard, we have a real challenge in Israel. If we want to be players in shaping the future of Israel, it cannot happen only from inside our synagogues. It must happen in the campuses, it needs to be in the streets, it needs to be in other NGOs that are welcoming our activists, and this is the duty of our movement in the coming few years to make sure that we are creating a network in Israel that goes beyond our sanctuaries and to meet those young Israelis who are willing to work hard in order to create a better environment for them, for their parents, and for their children, and to be with them in this struggle and this effort for a better Israel. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for what I think may be a roadmap for the future for the IMPJ. Our next speaker is David Rosa. I'm sure all of you have heard of him in another context, as singer and as songwriter. Now we'll hear from him as an activist and an optimist. He lives in Tel Aviv. He is most famous for a song named, or amongst his famous music, is a song, Yeh Tov, which means it will be good. An optimistic message for an Israeli to be making. We have asked David to start in his discussion with us today to explain the sources of that optimism and the contribution of social activism in Israel. David Rosa.
Thank you. I may be an activist only by the mere fact that I have never refused to take part in manifestations, be they political in aspect or social in aspect, or by merely helping those who are in need. I find that I've been given a gift of developing and creating a career that's music, and therefore wherever I go I try to bring a smile, entertain. I am the lighter side of life when it comes to being part of a society, and by nature I hold a positive light, and I suppose I'm the good news at the end of a day, or at the end of a battle, or at the end of a manifestation. I think the arts always, as I at least romance art, there's always been the core to a society. There's been a reflection and a mirror to a society, to its healthy sides, to its sick sides, to its violent sides, to actually the truth through which society lives. And we can go back, of course, into ancient writings and always look to see what was happening at the time. We can see it through poetry, through music, through art in general. And so it's not that I choose to be an activist, it's just the mere fact that I occupy myself in reflecting on a daily basis and expressing my feelings based on what I'm fed, from just going out in the street and buying my groceries, or meeting my neighbors, or traveling on a plane somewhere far away, landing in a new land and meeting with eyes of people that I've never seen and trying to communicate. However, this last summer, which is really the alert of the hour, has changed Israel, has changed not just Israel, but right now we see 3 Western societies that are in somewhat an unknown and unplanned coordination, starting from the Quince which is the Spanish civil rights movement that rose out last spring, which I was first to witness when I landed in Madrid, literally in May, and my hotel was in the center of town, and suddenly I found myself walking through literally a city of tents, and all the protesters there, and reading all the slogans, and feeling that there's an awakening of Spanish society in dire need to express the discontent from the way the government is handling, and it had nothing to do with I think it had nothing to do with the great plight of the Spanish workforce, being that they were then at 25% of workless people, now they're up to 40%. But then I looked at it and I took pictures, and I was listening to some of the rhetoric, and 3 months later, I'm walking Rothschild Boulevard, and I see a familiar scenario, and I see these tents that have taken over the Rothschild Boulevard. I don't think that Daphne Leaf, the girl who pitched her first tent, was even aware of what was going on in Spain. I don't think it was inspired by that. Perhaps it was. I never heard of her any reference from her. But it was so inspiring to see a correlated movement, which to me is really a reflection of a healthy society, a society that exists, a society that takes care now of its basic needs, and not only of what we have been occupied for so many years of, and I think in a sense of being like an ostrich, putting our head in the sand, not taking care of our basic social needs, and referring all the time to the fact that we need to take care of security first. It's like everything in Israel is only security. Well, after 6 decades, obviously there's a natural growth and a reformed society in every walks of life. And what has been so remarkable about the movement in Israel, that it did not pull in just one type of citizen. It was everybody. It was the religious, the ultra-Orthodox, it was the complete secular, it was the young students, the soldiers just out of the army, soldiers in the army, policemen. It was remarkable that there was no violence during those 3 months. It was remarkable that on a 300,000 people manifestation, the police were just asking the protesters to be a little bit more courteous and not to drag the police into having to arrest anybody. And actually, there was minimal arrests. How remarkable for a movement that is actually full of spite and full of I could say anger, but it's more a realistic awakening and a need to express and call out for a change. And it was really, I would say, more in the Aflatone way of expressing how a republic should actually handle itself, and that is that the people should convene outside of the parliament, outside of the official buildings that govern us, and express our discontent and express our need of certain issues to be addressed, and have the politicians come out and address them. As we know, to be a politician, it takes a certain breed, and it's got to be somebody with a very, very thick skin, and somebody who does not take in any abuse and look at it personally, but uses it as a matter of shoving it aside until it's in his face. Well, when 500,000 people, close even to 1 million, came out in the last manifestation at the end of August, that was a moment where really the government, although we did not convene outside of the government buildings, but we were close to them, of the government to actually accept the fact that they have to show some kind of respect to the public call. And even though the change has not been one that you could say is an overnight, and I don't think it would be good if it was an overnight, because then it means that there is no strong government either. You've got to respect the fact that a body of 120 legislators in the Knesset have something to do with the democratic society and the democratic process. And we have to challenge it. As the Rabbi just said, we're looking for even just a slight move towards opening and acceptance, and then we know that we're in the right direction. And I have no doubt in my mind that the Israeli society, through what it's going with and fighting for, is going to witness a positive change. You're asking me, why am I so positive? I mean, if I was so negative, I wouldn't even be drinking the water that comes out of the taps in Israel. I am drinking my own water, and I'm speaking my own language. I'm fighting and protecting my own borders. I'm actually establishing an identity that is unmistakably Israeli. It's the post-Zionism era. It's the era where an Israeli can choose and should choose what kind of a Jew he is. A secular, Reform Jew, an conservative Jew, an Orthodox. I mean, we have a palette full of options which were not there. We were always fed with what our parents gave us. We are a very, very, I think, pluralistic in mind. We're far from being a pluralistic society because we do have minorities that are living in a dire need for recognition and for acceptance. There's beginning to be Arab representation in the Knesset beginning. It's been many years, but it's not enough yet. There's beginning to be electricity provided and water provided to villages that before had not been. There's still a lot of atrocities and a lot of terrible deeds that the Israeli government and police and generally us, the society, are handling so wrongly with Bedouins and other situations. There's so much to be fixed. And therefore, I'm very happy because if everything was fixed, it would be bored as hell. And what would we talk about? Why would we convene? I think the wonderful thing about the Jews in the diaspora caring so much to maintain the identity not of Israel, of ourselves, and being in touch with Israel, being a core inspiration to our Judaism. I think this is the spark of my positiveness, and I just wish to be part of this for as long as I can and as long as I'm coherent. I don't know if I made any sense with what I was talking about, but I thank you for giving me these few minutes to express myself.
David, thank you for your impassioned framing of the summer and your role in it, and it was really a treat to hear from your partner.
By the way, I didn't mention the Occupy Wall Street and Occupy Gaylord.
And now Anat. Anat is a major leader for social justice in Israel, perhaps best known for never, ever, ever giving up, even when faced with seemingly insuperable obstacles. Anat was born and raised in Jerusalem, served in the Jerusalem City Council for 14 years, leading the opposition to the right-wing and ultra-Orthodox administration. She was a founding member of Women of the Wall and continues to be a tireless advocate for freedom of religion and women's rights. Then in 2002, she became the executive director of IRAC, the Israel Religious Action Center, the legal and advocacy arm of the Reform movement in Israel. IRAC's goals are to promote the values of religious pluralism, human equality, social justice, and religious tolerance in Israel, and to strengthen the public standing of the Israel movement for progressive Judaism, its congregations and institutions, and to protect their rights. So Anat's work both precedes and will follow this summer. Anat, can you frame it for us? What happened before? How does it fit? What's next? Anat.
Hello.
So, I'd like to say that this summer was our finest hour in years. Israelis convened in the streets, and we're in our argumentative bunch. It's been true for us for thousands of years. The first Jew, who was the first Jew? Abraham was the first Jew, and he starts arguing with God like a used car salesman. 40 just people, 30 just people, 20. A new God, a new believer, and the first thing, an argument. And in the end, he says to God, no, the judge of the whole cosmos is not going to be a just judge. An argument that somehow very different from other religions. Usually you fall on your face and you say, you don't say anything. Here's a big, healthy argument. And I would like to say that a healthy argument is really part of our DNA. But this summer, we argued like human beings. We actually listened to each other. There was very few feuds in the street, even though people from very different walks of life were demonstrating together. So it was our finest hour in discussing our differences. And I think four forces got together. First, the computer, the cottage cheese revolution. It's funny. In Tahrir, in Egypt, they were marching for basic rights, and in Israel, the price of cottage cheese. But still, we marched over that, and it was through the computers that this revolution started. The second thing was the neighborhood. Yes, the Arab Spring did affect us. We watched on TV every day how the neighbors are marching on various issues. The leadership of these demonstrations was seen as very, very clean, very innocent. Daphne Leaf, who's 23, is innocence incarnate. And that was very compelling. And last, we had the fabulous weather. Wonderful, wonderful weather during July and August. And really, when the rain started coming, we got a hangover. And the demonstrations have waned quite a bit. Just a house the whole thing. If you have not listed your name, you can sign up right now to be part of the Iraq and the URJ newsletter. So if you could sign up your name, we would be very, very grateful. Is there anybody here who reads our newsletter? Oh, I was going to slip $10 if someone gets something who says it's very good, but I'll be broke. It's very good. So if you're not signed up, why don't you sign up yourself? And when I finish, I'm the last speaker in this panel, you're going to be asking questions. So this is the time to generate questions for all the four of us, Canada, Gilad, Kariv, David Rosa as a category of his own, and myself. We'd love to hear your questions. We're allocating quite a bit of time for that. So I would like to tell you about one success that Iraq, the Israel Religious Action Center, which is the legal and political advocacy arm of the reform movement in Israel, one thing that we really succeeded in, I'm sure you know about it, it's the buses, those segregated buses in Israel. We wrote a report on Excluded for God's Sake. There are 3 of them here if you wish to have it. It's on our website in English. And we looked at all sorts of segregations in Israel, but especially the buses. When we started our struggle, there were 2,500 bus rides every day where women are assigned to the back of the bus. And boy, if you were not sitting in the back of the bus, you would be pushed to the back of the bus. And are there any freedom riders here who rode with us in Jerusalem buses? No? Yes? Okay, so... yes, so we have invited you guys to join us in this struggle. First, we won the Supreme Court petition. There is a sign in every Israeli bus that says, due to Supreme Court petition 47607, people can sit anywhere they want on the bus. Anyone harassing a person for where they sit is guilty of a felony. And once we won the case, and we wouldn't have won the case if it wasn't for Orthodox women. Orthodox women. Half of the Orthodox are women. So the women were calling us, and the women were saying, in effect, save us from our rabbis. We would not have won the case in court if it wasn't such a compelling case that Orthodox women were saying, we don't want to sit in the back of the bus. The bravest feminists I know are Orthodox women. So we won the case, and then we needed monitoring. We needed people to ride the bus and sit in the front and see what happens. And some of you have come to Israel, and we took you on freedom rides, which were fun for you and very effective for us. And what was effective is that if the driver does not help the woman, we sue him. And we agreed in the JTA just a few days ago. One of our plaintiffs won $1,000 from a driver who wouldn't help her on the 319 bus from Rehovot to Jerusalem. There are 9 other such complaints, and we're collecting more. It's terribly effective to sue the driver. I can tell you this works very well. But this is the success. It's very successful. The Washington Post had an article about this. Hillary Clinton talked about it at the Saban Forum. Barbara Streisand mentioned it in her concert last week in Los Angeles. It's well known around the world now that this segregation business is going on, and I think we're on the cusp of changing it. However, there's another situation that is just beginning and very disturbing, and I want to tell you that's the next challenge. And that is the next report that we've written about rabbis in Israel who are racist. There are about 4,000 state-paid rabbis in Israel, municipal rabbis, regional council rabbis, neighborhood rabbis, chief rabbis. Thousands of them are paid by the state. Only 49, a fraction, 1%, we discovered are racist. Racist, that means that they incite against the minority, the Arab minority in Israel, on 4 different categories. Don't fraternize Jewish women with an Arab. Don't buy in a place that employs Arab. Don't rent or sell an apartment to an Arab. And worst of all, heiter l'harigat goyim, permission to kill non-Jews. These rabbis are state-paid. There are elaborate disciplinary measures that can be used against them, and also it's a felony that's a 5-year imprisonment. You're not allowed to be, you can be a racist in Israel, but you can't be state-paid, and you can't publicize it in public this way. You can't incite. Anyway, we lodged 49 complaints against these rabbis. The police, in its wisdom, decided to investigate only 18. Why just 18? There were 49 complaints. Of the 18, 5 were charged. 4 said they're sorry. The charges were dropped. And only 1, Rabbi David Batzli, was sentenced to 140 community hours of labor in his own yeshiva for saying the following things. He said, the question is, why are Arabs with 2 legs, since they are donkeys and they should have 4 legs? It is so they could build and clean for us. There is a pure and impure, and they are impure. And it goes on. He said that at a demonstration outside the hand-in-hand Jewish-Arab school in Jerusalem. We want that in 18 months when we visit you, this issue is under control. We want the state to stop turning a blind eye and a deaf ear to this very dangerous phenomenon. It ends up with mosques being burned. Yesterday, the 8th mosque was burnt in Israel. 4 were across the border, across the Green Line, and 4 were in Israel. These are the remnants of the mosque in Tubatangria in the north, next to Oshpina. We turned to you after this was burnt in October 2011, and you were awfully generous. And you sent us $33,000. The Reform Movement was the only Jewish movement to be there the next day, offering new curtains, new carpets, new Qurans. Being there, they said they didn't know Jews could be that way. We were. And it was because of your generosity and immediate response. They sent us, it's a bit eerie. They sent us pieces of burnt carpet, broken glass, and burnt tile. Lots of it, actually. And I'm quite at a loss what to do with these things. But basically, the mosque that was burnt yesterday is another reminder that racism from the mouths of rabbis has got to stop. So just like 2 years ago, we talked to you about segregation of women, and you told us to stop it, and we really are able to limit this very much. In 2 years, we have to make sure that this phenomenon is put to a halt. It's not Jewish. It's not Israeli. It's so bad that we have to put an end to it. Thank you.
I'm sure all of us want to join me in thanking Anat for her inspiring efforts in the name of Reform Judaism, and to thank the entire panel for their contribution to the state of Israel, and Anat and Gilad for their leadership of all of us. We now have almost 45 minutes for questions. There are microphones. I think it's a big room, and let's try using the mics. And I will recognize first you. Oh, and would everyone please say their name and their congregation, and it's a standing mic right back there. So people can line up behind the mics now that they see that they're there. It's there.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the information that we've had tonight. My name is Charles Tillman. I work with Temple Bethel Cloister. I'm a Jew from the Middle East, so I've grown up with the Arabs. I have seen their wonder, the generosity, how wonderful people they could be, and at the same time I've seen their viciousness and savagery once they're incited to hate. Going to Israel, I was very surprised to see all the towns of the Arabs that were living, and they were completely segregated, obviously, from the Israelis. So I see them as possibly a fifth column. On the other hand, these are people that have lived in there for centuries. So with the rise of Islam and my knowledge of the Arabs, I would think there could be any moment where you would have some people there becoming anti-Israeli, increasing the possibility of suicide bombing and destruction. So when we are looking for their rights, how do you balance the danger that some of these people pose compared to giving them the rights as normal human beings living in Israel? Your thoughts, please.
Thank you. And I'll take 2 more questions, and then we'll answer all 3 at once. Next, please.
Andy Farber, Woodlands Community Temple. Are we satisfied with the progress we've had of women on the wall praying at the Western Wall? Or are we going to try to get women moving and praying up on the plaza?
Thank you. And sir?
Dick Reed, Temple B'nai Shalom, here in Fairfax Station, Virginia. Ms. Hoffman, we've spoken several times since I first met you in Jerusalem in 2007. You just mentioned the Post article. There were letters to the editor following the article saying, oh, those things don't happen. Women are not forced to go to the back of the bus. They never were. This is all fiction. My question to you is, should we here try to counteract those sorts of opinions in our press, or focus our efforts in Israel and just ignore what's happening here since it's just sort of on the periphery?
Thank you very much. I think, Gilad, I will ask you to begin answering the 3 questions. I'll review them briefly. How to balance, and I apologize for compressing the question, how to balance the danger posed by the possibility that Arab citizens are a 5th column versus the duty which we owe. Are we satisfied with the progress that has been made so far with women in Jerusalem, or do we need to go further? And should we work on advocacy in North America or focus our efforts in Israel?
You can hear me, right? I'll start by saying that Israel, as far as I know, has excellent secret services. And I trust the ability of the Israeli secret services, the larger Israeli community. The best way I would like to suggest, in order to minimize the danger, is to signal to the Palestinian community in Israel that they are equal citizens, and to work very hard in order to integrate this community in modern Israeli and close the gaps. Because the best way to make sure that the Palestinian citizens of Israel will find the ability to be at the same time loyal citizens, active citizens, members of the civil Israeli community and part of the Palestinian nation, is to signal that Israel is a democracy, a Jewish state, but a democracy that treats all its citizens with equality. As a matter of fact, the numbers of Israeli Arabs that were involved in criminal action, national criminal actions, terror actions against the state of Israel is marginal. And this is the data of the secret services in Israel. When it comes to the women, when it comes to the women of the wall, we have the founder member of the Women of the Wall. So I will not address the question if the women of the wall are satisfied with their situation. I can only reveal a secret that Anat is never satisfied with the current reality, but she will answer it. But I would like to suggest one thing, is that we need to be occupied with the status of women at the wall, and we need to be occupied also with the fact that less than 5% of all Jewish Israeli girls celebrate their bat mitzvah in Sa'ol with a meaningful Jewish traditional ceremony. And the importance of the work of the Women of the Wall is not only because we want to occupy the Wall Street, but also and mainly because we want to signal to Israeli women, Israeli girls, that they are truly invited to celebrate their Jewish identity the same way men do it in Israel. And in that regard, any reform or every Reform synagogue should be considered as another Western Wall in Israel. And the last question was?
Activism in North America.
Yes. I think that Anat already suggested to you that activism in North America works. We want you to help us to do the work in Israel. We want you to talk with the Israeli society, but I think that recent months prove the fact that the Israeli public and the Israeli government are tuned to the voices that we hear from North America. And when the Secretary of State is saying what she said a few weeks ago, and when the leaders of North American Jewry are signaling to the Israeli government that they are disturbed from an anti-democratic legislation, it is not less efficient than a direct involvement in Israel. So I really want to encourage you, and I believe that Anat will join me in that. I want to encourage you to make sure that together you present a strong, progressive North American voice in regard to what is happening here, but also what is happening in the state of Israel.
First, about the Arabs. I'd like to say that there are some towns that are mixed. There are Akko, Nazaret, Jerusalem, Haifa, where Jews and Arabs are together. And on the whole, it's usually a success story, especially in Haifa. Just on a small scale, there is a biblical zoo in Jerusalem. It's the only biblical zoo in the world, actually. And we have a proverb from the Bible next to every animal, except for the penguins when we wrote Noah's Ark, because they're not in the Bible. But in that zoo, we have Arabs and rabbis, seculars sitting together, and somehow in the presence of the wild animals, we get along fantastic. The zoo is run like a dream, and there are no problems there. So I have some hopes about mixing and having a joint society. And besides, we're only 1.2 million people. Any other measure would be un-Jewish. Like, any other way is not something we could ethically do. So we have to just live with our cousins and see that they have a lot in common with us, much more in common than we have different, and mixed in the neighborhood. That's where we belong. As to the question of the wall, allow me to take a moment to really rejoice faction of Judaism, and that minority is dictating life choices for the rest of us. And we, as long as there's never been a bat mitzvah at the wall, certainly we should be very dissatisfied. And whenever you want to express your dissatisfaction, just join us. Every Rosh Chodesh, it's famous, it's on every Jewish calendar. Join us at the wall in the new month and be detained by the police. Have some mischief with us at the wall every month, except for Rosh Hashanah. And as to should we correct foreign journalists when they make mistakes about Israel, I think or should we fix Israel? I think you should learn, it's a wonderful American idiom, you should learn to walk and chew gum at the same time. You're going to correct your local paper, and you're going to tell them that this and that is what we're doing in Israel. You should do both of these things together.
Regarding the Arab question, I think when you give someone something that they value, the last thing they're going to want to do is throw it away. When you don't give them anything that they value, they're going to do everything in their power, either to destroy what you have, which is valuable to you, or to just finish their lives. And I think this is where the plight of the Arab, the plight of the refugee starts. It starts from years and years of disproportionate unhappiness. And it just brings any human being to the level of just behaving like an animal without no rationale whatsoever. And therefore they give their finest sons. They put them with, load them with gunpowder and they explode them. They have nothing to live for. And when you give them, like today you see in the West Bank, the development has calmed down the society to the levels that we've never known before. Suddenly there's optimism over there. They're calmer. I'm not talking about the political level. I'm talking about the value, the waking up in the morning, going out to work. And hence, the future looks a lot brighter. And therefore, with our villages in Israel, the Arab villages, the villages of the minorities, if they were just given and implemented the plans and given a brighter future, why would they want to throw it away? On the contrary, this is where the equality comes into the picture, where they begin to feel that they're as integrated as could be. And it may take time, and it will take time, it should take time. But if there is a future, they're not going to throw it away.
Hello? Hi, my name is Anthony. I'm from Finchley Reformed Synagogue in London. I was very fortunate over the summer to join the March of the Million in Tel Aviv. It was so inspiring to see different people from different walks of life coming together. One thing I was surprised about from what I saw were the lack of Russian, Ethiopian and other minority voices, some of whom faced the most desperate situations within society. And I wanted to know, was this a common challenge? And is there something that can be done to bring these voices into the mainstream?
Thank you.
Much of what we've been talking about is a conflict, or at least what Anat was talking about, is a conflict with the Orthodox ruling parties in the government. So I wanted to know what your views are, any of you, on if there should be a separation between Knesset and Beit Knesset, which is sort of the transition of church and state here in America, but Beit Knesset and Knesset synagogue and the parliament in Israel, and if so, what would make Israel a Jewish state anymore if it's just simply a secular state? Is it just a state for the Jews that's a refuge, or is there some kind of Jewish character fulfilling a 2,000-year dream? And just as a side note also, the Netanyahu administration has decided to build a stronger fence along the Egyptian border to keep the Sudanese immigrants out. While the Sunnis are a big economic problem for the state, how can we as a nation born only 3 years after our own genocide decide to suddenly put up a fence to all of these people who are coming, seeking refuge from a war that has left 2 million refugees, and we don't even take care of the ones who are already in the country? So your views on those two questions.
And your name, please, and synagogue?
I'm Noah Weinberg from Evanston, Illinois. I go to Temple Beth Israel.
Thank you.
My name is Rifkin from Congregation Hakafah in Glencoe, Illinois, next door to Evanston. David, I have a question for you. Would you consider yourself a secular Jew? And until this summer, were you aware of IMPJ in Iraq? And thirdly, from what you've heard, would you lend your voice to the outspoken support of both Iraq and IMPJ?
Thank you. I would like you to answer that question first, please.
Well, yes, I am aware, and I would certainly lend my voice. I think, first of all, I'm a secular Jew. I respect the traditions. I spent some years in a very orthodox boarding school in England, so I've gone through the aleph bet of carrying a prayer and living as a religious person when I was a teenager, which was the last thing I wanted and needed at the time, and I got thrown out. And I've chosen my Judaism in my own way, perhaps in a unique way. My children grow up knowing that they're Jewish. We do the Shabbat dinner, and etc. But certainly we don't go to synagogue on a regular basis. I'm fascinated by the reform movement in Israel and how it is spreading, although slowly. But I'm very fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by conservatism. I think conservatism in Judaism is also something that could be very effective and contribute a lot. I do frequent, if I ever go to synagogue, Temple Sinai on Bulgashov Street, and I've contributed to actually getting money for them to build their now almost completed news center and synagogue in Shkunat Shabazi, which is magnificent. And Robert Torbi, great leader, wonderful rabbi, I have had many good conversations. And so yes, I think Israel needs all walks of Judaism, and it cannot be led and dictated by one particular group, and certainly not by an Orthodox one. It should be a democratic procedure, even when it comes to religion, as difficult and as ironic as it would sound. I don't know what you would want me to do. I mean, I would be there in any situation, and I have been in the past, and I've actually offered to in Jerusalem. I've offered before.
We'll put you to work.
That's easy. I'm all over the place. Regarding the Ethiopian participation or Russian participation in the summer, if you would look into it, there were Ethiopians, especially on the Gilad, that they were at the end, towards Herzl Street. I saw them and I talked to them. As far as Russians, I don't know. It's difficult to say. I think the Russians are a very, very large group and not yet as so integrated as one would expect. They've been in Israel at most, we're talking about the million that came after the Perestroika in '89, and they're still integrating, and they still maintain a very strong tie to their own language tradition and getting adjusted into democracy. Hence Lieberman and the entire constituents that go around with the Russian thing. And I think they don't understand really what they're missing, and eventually they will be integrated as any group. But it does take, Israel is a funny country in that sense. There are so many cultures, and it's so difficult to be able to translate one message that would suit everybody. So it's just a matter of time, and I think Russians will benefit. The Ethiopians do have a lot to say about their integration, and they do actually go up to the Knesset on a regular basis with their leaders and voice their concerns and protest. So we must support them, although they speak a very different Judaism. I mean, they practice a very different Jewish view, but they're wonderful and have become a very strong part of the Israeli society.
I'm going to ask everyone's indulgence to break the rules just for a moment. Our dear friend Sue Clow is at the microphone, and Sue, because we have one question answered, I'd like you to add one more for our friends to respond to.
My name is Sue Clow, Temple Beth Shalom, San Juan, Puerto Rico. I think I know what a Jew by choice is. I have two of them as daughter-in-laws. I think I know what a spiritual Jew is. I think I know what a cultural Jew is. I think I know what an atheist Jew is, but I really don't know what a secular Jew is. I'm under the impression that a secular Jew is a Jew that does not belong or is not affiliated with any temple or synagogue, but when they choose to get married in Israel, they must get married by an Orthodox rabbi. Or when they pass away, sadly, they must be buried by an Orthodox rabbi, but they are secular Jews. I've been under the impression, and Anat has told me so many times, that the Reform movement is just perfect for these secular Jews, if only they would understand what Reform Judaism is. But yet, they seem to stay and proudly say, I'm a secular Jew. I'd really like to know, please tell me more, what is a secular Jew?
Anat, would you like to begin?
Want me to answer? I'm a secular Jew. We have our own thing. It's called a secular Jew. We don't have synagogues for secular Jews. We don't have assembly places for secular Jews. We choose to just be Israelis, I suppose, or like in the United States, we're just an American citizen. But when it comes to pointing out who's the Jew, you're going to have to put your hand up because you're born Jewish. But you may not be a practicing Jew when it comes to even a Reform Jew who has a place where you can come to once a week, once a month, once a year and pray. I choose whether I want to go to the Reform prayer or Conservative or Orthodox, which reminds me of my grandfather's way of praying. I'm a secular Jew.
Friends, I suggest that we will have to spend another session in regard to secularism in Israel, but I think without suggesting a definition for what is a secular Jew, I grew up in a secular family and I chose to be a Reform Jew, but without suggesting a clear definition, and I'm not so sure there is a clear definition or one definition for who is a secular Jew. I think that it is a real challenge for our movement, because it is quite clear that most Israelis that are not Orthodox are not going to be affiliated members of Reform congregations, conservative congregations, or Orthodox congregations. And the Israeli model of religious life, communal life, is different than the model in North America. I would like to suggest carefully that the same way I believe the Israelis have a lot to learn from the North American model of Reform Judaism, I think that also the Israeli model of a movement that by definition serves larger circles of non-affiliated Jews can be also valuable to Reform life in North America. In regard, I will address, I think David addressed the issue of the Russian and the Ethiopian Israelis. I will say one sentence about the refugees and one sentence. I'll start with the separation of a synagogue and state. We have a very clear standing, and we fully understand that the American model of a strict separation between religion and state is less relevant to Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. It doesn't mean that we can live with the current situation. And when we are trying to frame what we work for, we are using the frame of institutional separation between synagogue and state. And the concept is that religious institutions will not be part of the executive branch, and that religious life will be organized in Israel on an independent base, on the desire of the people and not on legislative authorities. And I'm glad to say that this concept of moving religion to the private arena of life in Israel and not to keep it under the supervision of the government, I'm glad to say that more and more modern Orthodox forces in Israel understand the benefits and the importance of this model, because, as probably you know, the Orthodox establishment today in Israel is actually an ultra-Orthodox establishment in Israel, and modern Orthodoxy is also excluded from the establishment that they created 64 years ago, and it will not happen tomorrow, but slowly there is a growing understanding among modern Orthodox communities that they are also the victims of the current situation. In regard to the refugee issue, I would like to carefully suggest that one of the advantages we have in Israel, but also the challenges, is to bring our Jewish values to sovereign life of a nation. And when you're implementing Jewish values in a national level, there are many, many challenges. And I don't know any Western country in the world that just leave its border open and say, I don't care who crosses the border. And Israel is the only Western country that has a land border with Africa. And we have a challenge with African immigrants. Some of them are refugees, and under the international law and under the set of our Jewish values, they should receive a shelter in the Jewish homeland. But we need also to admit that there is a serious labor immigration into Israel in Africa. And if you want to deal with the social challenges in Israel and poverty, you cannot close your eyes to this phenomena of massive labor immigration. We don't live in a fake state, we live in a real state. And when you live in a real state, you need to find real solutions. And you need to make the real effort that those solutions will follow your values. And in that regard, as a liberal Jew who is involved in working for the refugees that are coming from Sudan, I'm not so sure that building a fence on our border with Egypt is such a bad idea.
I'd like to share with you something that is not trivial. You heard a rabbi just telling you now that Israeli Arabs deserve a fair shake, that it is our Jewish obligation to do right by the stranger. That's actually written 36 times in the Bible. That we should embark on a reasonable and balanced immigration policy about the refugees. He forgot to mention that he opened a kindergarten for 25 young kids of these refugees, kids of single mothers, mostly in Jerusalem. And this rabbi, with a vision that imparted with you a real bird's-eye view of what happened this summer, is the leader of our movement in Israel, but is not recognized as a rabbi in our country. While these people, and that's one of the great tragedies, first and foremost, it's very bad that Israelis cannot look up at Gilad as a rabbi, and having been paid and recognized by the state as a rabbi, because he's a graduate of the Hebrew Union College, and the Hebrew Union College is not recognized in Israel as an institution of Jewish learning. At this point, green smoke should be coming out of your ears. What? The Hebrew Union College is not recognized? We've got to do something about it. Of course you do. And if you list your names on the newsletter, sure, to put you to work about this issue. I want to say something else that I brought with me on the plane from Israel. Yes, I did bring some rocks. Yes, I brought some burnt mosque. Yes, I brought some segregated in the public sphere. I brought the Book of Women of the Wall. But I brought a pair of sandals. This is a pair of sandals like which you've never seen. It walked from Darfur to Khartoum, from Khartoum to Cairo, from Cairo to Sinai, and from Sinai to Israel. It comes with a text. The text of the refugee that walked all this and his personal story and what happened to him in Sinai. It's blood chills. These used sandals that I carried from Israel, I think could make a holy object, could be in a congregation with the text that talk to me later if you have this possibility of making a new kind of Judaica, a Judaica that is the living thing that brought from Darfur to Israel. Okay?
You understand that after this refugee came to Israel, she took his shoes. What she can do.
It's true, but I gave him a choice of 360 shekel, any kind of Nike, Puma, whatever that was. He has a brand new pair.
And we all understand why Anat can inspire us through IRAS. I'm going to take these last two questions because we have to be out at 3:30. Please.
I'll be quick. My name is Shira Gluck. I'm from Temple Bethel in Hillsborough, New Jersey. And I think it's important when we are characterizing ourselves as pluralistic Jews that we not only seek acceptance from other kinds of Jews, but to also offer our own acceptance. So I'm seeking some advice. In Israel, I had a difficult time with Orthodox Jews who would say, you know, the question we've all gotten, are you dati or lo dati? And there's no distinction between religious and not religious. And you'll be dismissed if you're not religious. And now I live in Brooklyn, 4 blocks from the world headquarters of the Lubavitcher movement. And they see you're like us or you're not, so we're going to try and make you be like us. So how can I relate to these kinds of Jews and be understanding and accepting of them, but also be strong in my Reform identity?
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Lori Franklin from Missoula, Montana. And this is a question that may need to be discussed after this forum. It may not be something you have time to really address here this afternoon. But I know that when you're in an advocacy position and you're suing government agencies or private organizations, you know, there is always this bank account of bitterness that can build against being on the opposite sides of an issue. I also know that it's possible at the same time to be developing relationships with people who are in positions in government, either legislators or in branches of government that are part of the executive and even the courts, who do support the changes that you're working toward. And so it would be so interesting, because I live at a distance, and even though I read your newsletter, you know, the details of these sorts of relationships are not there, and I suspect partly because some of them may be sensitive. People don't want to reveal support that they might have for you because it hasn't tipped to be acceptable in general. So that you are having conversations that may not necessarily be, you may not be able to make them public yet. But it would be really interesting for those of us who support the establishment of a progressive presence in Israel as a recognized presence, to have more understanding of what some of the behind-the-scenes conversations exist, what they are, and with whom you're able to speak, and you know what kind of advocacy is happening in that area. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. I was asked by Anat and Gilad to make a first comment in response to your question. It's actually been a key issue for me in the work that I've done representing the Reform movement in organizations which include conservative, Orthodox, and secular Jews working together around a table in Israel and abroad. And it's been a very interesting process of establishing our credibility as religious Jews. The Orthodox Jews around the Zionist table accept now the leadership of World Mizrahi and the people who work with him now regard our movement as a religious movement because they understand that we are serious Jews. And similarly, we've been able to find common ground on areas of values. It took many years, but we were able to find common ground on areas of values from working day by day together around the table which Natan spoke about last night, Unity of the Jewish People Committee. It's actually one of the most inspiring things that we are able to do together. Instead of being others, we're allies in important work, and we've been able to take ourselves, each side the other, more seriously and in a new way. turn to the panel, how to relate and what happens behind the scenes.
I'm tickled pink that someone from the Zulu Montana is here and cares about behind the scenes. The behind the scenes in Israel is usually having to do with intricate networks that are built over time. And yes, we're trying to, if you were pointing out the resentment that might be built throughout the years, I wish there was a resentment bank and I would put a deposit every day and get rid of it, because it does wear you down. I think, though, that one of the things that really helped me reach balance this year was those Orthodox women, the fact that they're calling us, and they're calling the Reform movement. They're saying, help us, save us from our rabbis. We are willing to talk to you on the phone. Some of us are willing to stand up and be counted. It has made me a straight woman, it's a direct quote from Hebrew, but it went to a different direction. It made me a more balanced person, more balanced woman. And in Hebrew, the word balance is the word ozen, ear, comes from the same place. So yes, listening to them has made me less angry, because I realize now that behind every Orthodox man, there's an Orthodox woman, and she's calling on the phone, and she's saying, stop those buses, and that brings a lot of balance.
Then we thought that if there were time on our panel, and I think there's time, we would ask David to close with a song of optimism. David,
So that'll answer all your questions. I'll sing. This is the first song I ever wrote, so it's perfect for closing. Music. I wrote the music along with my good friend Jonathan Geffen, great Israeli poet, on the night when President Sadat arrived in Israel, which is the beginning of the peace process as we know it. And we wrote it thinking it would be, I'd sing it for maybe a couple of months, and then peace would be built.
If I may mention that David Boza added a new section to this song during the summer.
Oh, we rewrote the song.
They rewrote the song during the summer in response to this exciting Tikkun Olam summer.
So which version do you want? Well, both. It's like 53 verses. See, we'll be here till next summer. Rabbi, you tell me which one. I'll call you Rabbi. You're not allowed to be called Rabbi.
Take the verse with Sadat and one new verse. Do a combination. You ask a rabbi.
No, we're going to.
And the reform rabbi.
Yeah, so we're going to do a reformed version. Okay, let's see how it goes. So this will mix the old and the very new, which I rewrote just with Jonathan Geffen, just for the social movement and people singing it in all these different camps, from Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Kiryat Motzkin, Kfar Yoshua. Hey. I've been singing it for 34 years, Are you not sick of this song? אם הביט מאחר, זה עושה לי די עצוב. translation on YouTube, actually. כבר שנים רבות שתקנו, והושפלנו עד עפר, ממשלות ספרו את הכסף, איש אותנו לא ספר, לא העוני הוא לא פשע, ואנחנו לא נשלים, עד שירד שלטון הרשע, מגדלים לאוהלים. ויהיה טוב כשנהיה פה, מאילת ועד חצור, גם אם ארוכה הדרך, צעד לא נעצור. לא נקשיב לדמגוגיה, איש אותנו לא יבחין, כי למי שאין לו כלום, גם מה להפסיד. בקלות אתה נשלחת לגור בנלחמות, אך אם חי תחזור הביתה, אין חיים ונדיבות. ויהיה טוב כשנהיה חודש, ונצעד למורה, לבבות אחים לאוהל, במלחמת אין ברירה. Let me conclude with one verse from the original. Nothing's original anymore. I think it's rewritten and rewritten as history would be. This says that we shall learn to live together under the autumn trees, and that children will grow up knowing no more war, no terror, and no frontiers, and that fresh new grass will grow over the graveyards for love and peace. After 100 years of war, we haven't and will not lose hope. עוד נלמד